Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. Today, I kind of just want to talk about a team and kind of more a young core that has been flying under the radar over the course of this season, led by another player who has been flying under the radar in terms of the Rookie of the Year race, and that team and player are the Orlando Magic and Franz Wagner. In particular, the Orlando Magic finally, after way too long, made the decision to try and rebuild last trade deadline. It's something that me and many other people were advocating for over the years, as we are kind of doing now for some other teams that I won't mention the names of. But the Magic were a team that felt like they were always in that limbo state. They were always around like the 7 or 8 seed, never good enough to really make a playoff run, but never bad enough to really get some good prospects to kind of help out that core that they had. They've had a bunch of young players in the past: Elfrid Payton, Victor Oladipo, Tobias Harris, some of which went on to become pretty solid players, those latter two especially, but they never just really worked out in Orlando, so they've been kind of in this limbo state for a while, and now finally, at the trade deadline last season, they dealt Gordon, they dealt Vucevic, they finally decided to rebuild, they dealt Fournier, and here they are. They're really bad, which is fine. That's exactly what everyone expected. This is what the Magic needed to do for so long, and it's clearly showing very early dividends, them blowing things up. This past draft, they got Jalen Suggs with the 5th overall pick. They got Franz Wagner with the 8th overall pick. And Franz Wagner in particular has been going crazy. He's been having a phenomenal season so far. He's averaging 15.6 points per game, 2.7 assists, right around 5 rebounds, a steal, half a block a game, and he's shooting efficiently. He shot 37% from 3 on the season. He's shooting 45 from the field, and he had a 30-point game the other day. Franz Wagner is doing incredible things as a rookie that kind of has flown under the radar in every aspect. Starting off by coming into the draft, I remember seeing people on my timeline talking about how they were praying their team didn't take Franz Wagner. So many fans of different teams in that early lottery area didn't want him on their squad. He wasn't a very flashy name. He wasn't a very flashy player. He was kind of just fundamentally sound, kind of all around at some different things, but nothing that people were super excited about, at least on NBA Twitter. I'm not saying this about like draft experts, because I'm sure a lot of draft experts knew how good he was going to be, but kind of just looking through my Twitter feed, it seemed like no one really wanted him. And I don't know if that's the reason why no one's really talking about him, but I feel like Franz Wagner is a guy that continues to fly under the radar. He dropped 38 points, and I felt like I saw one person talk about it. Like, no one's really talking about it outside of like a couple pages here and there. If I didn't follow like 13,000 accounts on Twitter, I probably, and also, kept up with the NBA religiously, I may not have known about it if I was just a casual fan. And he is very quickly making the Rookie of the Year race super interesting. Of course, you have Evan Mobley, you have Scotty Barnes, and Cade Cunningham. Those are probably the top 3 guys in the Rookie of the Year race. If you ask most people, they'll probably say some order of those 3 guys. But in my opinion, Franz Wagner deserves to be in that top 3, top 4 consideration. The way that he's been playing defensively, offensively, he's been a phenomenal player. He's been so consistent as well. There are very few nights where Franz just looks bad. Pretty much every night he's going to look average to really good. And the way that he's kind of just excelled past expectations has been super impressive for a guy that now looks like he could be the future centerpiece of this Magic core. Of course, they're probably going to add another great prospect in this draft that might take that mantelpiece, but as of right now, Franz Wagner looks like the best player on this team night in and night out. And that's something that's kind of, once again, I keep saying it, flying under the radar. We don't talk about Franz Wagner that much. And when we look at the Magic's core kind of as a whole, this Magic core looks super interesting. The Magic have a super bright future in this league, and I feel like they're one of the more underrated young cores in the NBA. So let's take a look at some of the guys on this roster. Cole Anthony, for example, 20 points per game, shooting 35% from 3, like 42% from the field, which isn't great or anything like that, but he's being asked to carry a heavy scoring load without Markelle Fultz at the guard position, missing Jonathan Isaac, who would do some scoring as well, and just kind of on a team that doesn't have a lot of go-to scorers. Cole Anthony is leading the team. He's averaging 6 assists, 6 rebounds, a steal. He's doing a little bit of everything. He has really been a phenomenal player, and he's definitely in that most improved player race, I would say. I already mentioned Franz Wagner, who is their second leading scorer, continues to fly under the radar in the Rookie of the Year race. I personally think he's top 3. Then you've got Wendell Carter Jr., 12.8 points per game, game, 10 rebounds, 2.5 assists. He was kind of the big piece that they got back from the Chicago Bulls, alongside, of course, their first-round pick, but they got back him as the big player piece in that trade for Nikola Vucevic, and he has really shined in kind of this more expanded role. He's got kind of some of the pressures taken off of him, having another big. He's not relied on to be that, like, center that they have to rely on. They've got Mo Bamba alongside him. Robin Lopez has played some solid backup minutes as well, and kind of in that more reduced but also expanded role in kind of a weird fashion. Wendell Carter Jr. has played really well. He's shooting efficiently from 3, 34%. He's shooting about 50% from the field. Like I mentioned, he's grabbing 10 boards, 13 points. He's just kind of doing he has an all-around game. And I kind of always pictured him as kind of like an Al Horford type player where he can hit the 3-ball. He's never going to be a phenomenal scorer, but he's going to get some boards. He's going to play solid defense, and he's going to hit some outside shots if you need him to. That is Wendell Carter Jr. That is kind of the mold that he fits into, and I think he's playing really well in that somewhat mold in Orlando so far. Jalen Suggs, he was their top draft pick. He's had kind of a rocky start to his season, but there are some promising things there. Of course, I'm not saying he's a bust or anything. Sure, he hasn't lived up to the expectations maybe to start off, but there are plenty of players that are, especially this season, shining that didn't quite live up to their expectations in their rookie season. Notably, I can mention a guy like Darius Garland. And so while Jalen Suggs is only averaging 12 points per game, 3.6 assists, only 3.4 rebounds, shooting fairly inefficiently, he's had some bright moments, and I do still think there was a lot there for Jalen Suggs. He's only 20 years old. He's going to be perfectly fine, and I do think he still has a lot of potential in him. And if Jalen Suggs not showing out and your young core still looks really good, that's a pretty good sign for a guy that a lot of people, me included, think has a pretty high potential. You talk about Mo Bamba, who is someone who, for a long time, was kind of buried on the depth chart in Orlando. Mo Bamba averaging 10 points per game, 8.6 rebounds, 2.2 blocks as well. He's hitting some threes. He's doing a little bit of everything. It's so good to see Mo Bamba play in this expanded role. He's been starting games for them. He started all 27 games that he's played, which is something that I really wanted to see out of him. I've always been a guy who has advocated to see more Mo Bamba minutes. I always thought it made no sense that he was buried, because you're always a team that's been kind of mediocre. You're not a championship contending team, and he's always been an option there for you off the bench. They could have even slotted him into the starting lineup. There are always options with Mo Bamba, and it's cool to see that he's finally getting those expanded opportunities. He's a guy that for a long time I wanted on the Thunder if the Magic ever decided to trade him, and he's kind of showing why I wanted him. He stretches the floor, he blocks shots, he's just kind of a really fun player to watch, and finally at age 23, he's getting some pretty good opportunities. You've got Gary Harris, who has kind of been reviving his career in Orlando. He's averaging 10 points per game. He's averaging 2 assists, a couple of rebounds a game. He's shooting 35% from 3, 45% from the field, and as of recently especially, Gary Harris is having some really solid games. He's only 27 years old, so there still is some in the tank. I don't know if he's quite part of the young core per se, but he has had some pretty solid moments, and so he is a guy that even if he isn't part of the young core, I think they could trade him probably at the deadline and bring in another younger player kind of in a similar mold at the shooting guard position. You've got RJ Hampton, who, despite in limited minutes, has shown a lot of promise. 40% from 3, for example. He's averaging 7.3 points per game in the games that he does play. He gets a couple assists, a couple rebounds. He does a little bit of everything, and he is a guy that I do like. Chuma Okeke is a fun player. He showed a ton of flashes last season, and while he's in a little bit of a less kind of prominent role, now that they've got all these different guys playing, I do think Chuma Okeke is a fun player at 23 years old. While he is having a down year, I do think there is plenty of potential for him to kind of find that rhythm that he had last season. Maybe not quite put up the stats that he had last season, but still kind of find a similar rhythm. And so as we continue to go through this roster, there are all of these guys that are so fun. And the ages of these guys too. Cole Anthony, 21. Franz Wagner, 20. Wendell Carter Jr., 22. Jalen Suggs, 20. Mo Bamba, 23, despite feeling like he's been in the league for 18 years. RJ Hampton, 20 years old. Chuma Okeke, 23 years old. They don't even have Markelle Fultz or Jonathan Isaac, 2 other younger pieces on this team. This Orlando Magic team is super young and a really promising young core. And they're a good example of how finally blowing up a team can make your future look so much brighter. Their future looked super bleak last season, where they were just kind of middle of the pack, mediocre, and they finally decided to make the moves to really just blow things up and start from scratch. And this young core very early on has shown a ton of promise, led of course, like I mentioned, by Cole Anthony and Franz Wagner as their top 2 guys, and those two look like a super fun duo going into the future. The Magic this season are going to get a top 5 pick. They're going to be probably the worst team in the league this season and have the top odds at the number 1 overall pick. Imagine if they add like a Paolo Banchero to this team. And then you go out there and you've got Cole Anthony, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr., Mo Bamba, Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero. This team's future is super, super bright. And I feel like we're not talking enough about the Orlando Magic. I get it. They're in Orlando. They're not very good right now, but they are one of the teams that I think is kind of flying under the radar in terms of their young core and their bright future. So when you talk about some of the young and really bright cores in the NBA, make sure to mention the Orlando Magic because they deserve some of that respect. So this was kind of just a quick video for me to talk a little bit about the Magic. I feel like I said, haven't really seen much talk about them, but they definitely deserve it. They deserve the hype, and they've been playing not great, but they've had some competitive games, and I do think this young core is showing so much promise in its first season kind of in this rebuilding state. So let me know what you think about the Magic. Do you think Franz Wagner is a Rookie of the Year candidate? What about Cole Anthony is most improved? Let me know all of that in the comment section below. I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Real